Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanette. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today, my guest is Stephanie Benedetto Padovani of the Awakened Business. She helps coaches, healers, and spiritual entrepreneurs craft an irresistible message to attract soulmate clients online with IP marketing or endless social media postings. She is a wide creation coach, soul storyteller, and unmarketer who uses curious questions, stories, and play to inspire joyful creation in all its forms. She's coached both solopreneurs and multi-million-dollar businesses and has been featured on the Huffington Post, Fox Business News, blogs, and numerous publications on and offline. So thank you very much for being my guest today. And I'm really happy speaking to you and having you here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Swanette, and thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I'm curious, not only for my audience, but also for myself. I already had a little bit of information before we now start speaking. And so what you're doing is really special, using storytelling for bringing out people and showing them in the world. How did you, what was your journey that you came there to this point and what you're doing now?
It's interesting. So I will answer that question as it occurs to me right now. So you mentioned about story. I think that what I'm doing now with entrepreneurs, and these are the people who find me, the people who are most inspiring for me to work with, are people who have a vision for a change that they'd like to see, something they'd like to create. And it's a calling. It's not just a business mission. It is a personal mission and a calling for them. And it's so inspiring to be a part of that. And I think I had always been a storyteller and didn't realize it. Somehow, it's one of those things that was always with me, and I just never acknowledged it until I think about a year and a half ago. I was working with a coach, and part of the work that we did was to look at all these different personality typing systems and collect words and distill them down to the essence of who I am and what my purpose is, which was a really fun journey in many ways. And one of the words that came out to describe me is storyteller, storytelling. And it felt so right. And I thought to myself, but I'm not a storyteller. What do you mean? And then I started looking at my life and realizing, oh, well, you've been a writer forever. Since I was a little kid, I used to tell stories and perform plays. And I started thinking, well, wouldn't it be fun to bring that into my business more? What if I did? What if I could help change the world with stories? What would that look like? How many different ways could I do it? What would be the most inspiring way? And so what that did for me was take that element of fun that stories represent to me and something I love, and just I gave myself permission to start exploring what that might look like inside of my business. And so all kinds of things came out of that, such as I started doing storytelling transformation sessions with people where we actually tell stories together. And I realized that I've always been doing this. I've been in the marketing world. I'm putting that in quotes now because I don't even like the word marketing anymore. I prefer to call it unmarketing. I've been in that world for a long time and have always told stories as a way of connecting with people. That's what good marketing is. It's just communication, and we speak and learn and hear in stories. That's how we connect. And I started really embracing it and helping people to recognize the gorgeous stories that they have. It's so easy for me, so easy for other people sometimes to miss how that compelling story is right there. What you're doing is right there. And there are so many different ways to touch it. And when you share that, it's authentic and it's easy and it connects very powerfully.
Yeah, this is very strong because for me as a coach, I always hear stories of the people and what they have been through in life and what they have experienced. And especially when they are in this moment of awakening. They feel, okay, this was not only that I was suffering a lot, but also that this is something that gave me a special gift, or that I can use now for other people to help them with telling my story. Yeah.
Yeah, I love asking questions like this of my client playmates. That's what I call them, because client is just too businessy for me. So I've added playmates. So you know what I'm talking about. We're playing, we're having fun. And it sometimes takes a little while for them to bust out of the limitations and the thinking that they've had about business. It's supposed to look a certain way. But one of the questions I love to ask is, all right, well, just what do you love to do? Hear them get excited about something that they think they'd like to do, but they've kept it in this little box. Like, this is the only place I can do it. And asking, well, what if you brought that in to what you're doing over here? What would that look like in your business? If you could do it anyway, how would you do it? And when we really give ourselves permission to do that, amazing things start to come out, because it's alive in you. Your gifts are alive in you, and it's like they want to be shared. They're inviting it. And when we give them permission to come into your business, you can just ideas and excitement and things, the path opens much easier, and you're enjoying it so much more.
Yeah, but also sometimes it's interesting to hear, like, what is a story people tell about themselves? And when you listen to other people and they tell the story about the same person, you think, no, this can't be the same one. Yeah? So it's also like understanding what is the story that is holding them back, and what do other people see already in the gifts of others. Yeah.
Well, this is the interesting thing, and why I love story as a metaphor, because we are constantly telling stories. We tell stories about our world. A story in its simplest form is simply a series of events that happen in a sequence. But what we do with that story is we give it a meaning. And we can tell the same sequence of events with a million different meanings. And there is a different story being told by every person in any given moment. And I am telling a different story in every moment. And sometimes I forget. Sometimes I start living in an old story. I start telling the story that maybe seemed true to me at 10 years old of, oh, I'm shy and I'm afraid to talk to strangers, right? But that's a story. They're all stories. And if I know that they're not inherently true, oh, I don't have to tell that story. I wonder what other story I would like to tell. And that's incredibly powerful. That's how I've used story as transformation. Sometimes I will actually have someone invite someone to tell a story with me. Okay, tell a story. A lot of times people need a little bit of encouragement, so I will help them along. But we'll tell a story, and at some point they'll get to a stuck place in their story, which is really interesting, because when we're making up a story, literally anything can happen. It does not have to obey the laws of this reality, and yet still they will come to a stuck place. And I can see it because I'm kind of outside the story they're telling. But when we start to play with that stuck place, and I can draw their attention to, oh, where in your life are you doing this? It's a very, very powerful metaphor that shows them something about their lives that maybe they've never seen, and they can have an insight that's very powerful from that place.
Yeah, what I also see is like, yeah, people always have these blocking beliefs. They come from their education, from the culture, and the way they are living until now. And these beliefs are so strong that they are not only in their own lives, but they generalize them. So they can also happen if they, for example, tell a story to other people. Yeah. So this is like the limiting area they are inside, like the box they are living in. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And even just realizing, just thinking for a moment, oh, what if all of these things that I'm thinking are stories? Just what does that mean? Wow. It's very freeing. It can show us in smaller and larger ways how much more is possible than we've ever imagined.
Yeah. Also, like, what was the experience and what was the interpretation I gave into it?
Yeah.
And therefore stories appear, and it's never too late to tell you another story and therefore create another life. So it mustn't depend on what your story has been to create your future, but you can change it as soon as you understand what your story is.
Yeah. I remember I did an exercise many years ago, and it was, I don't remember if it started. I think it might have been, I was in college and I was studying narrative therapy, but I decided to do it for myself. And so I wrote about this incident that was very painful for me as a young girl. And it was a simple thing that happened. And I wrote about it 3 different ways. So the way that was painful for me, the painful story was my mother had told me that she had quit smoking because at the time we were very, very religious and involved in the born-again Christian church, and it was evil to smoke, and so she had quit smoking. And then I caught her smoking at the back of the house, and I felt so betrayed. I felt like she'd been lying to me. I was disillusioned. I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and it just hurt me in so many ways. And I thought, my mother's lying to me, and she's going to hell. You know, that's what I believed at the time, which is very painful for a young girl to think these things. So I told the story that way. I wrote it that way. And then I wrote it just the facts. A girl walks around the building and sees a woman smoking a cigarette. Those are just the facts. There's no meaning in them at all. And then I wrote it a third way from my mother's point of view, as imagining myself as her, getting caught by her daughter smoking. And in that version, I imagined that my mother felt ashamed, felt guilty, wanted to hide it, wanted to be a better mother, was just feeling a lot of pain that I had seen her. And it really shifted something for me, just doing that. And I realized that none of those are true. They're all just stories. Even the facts themselves, certain things are left out. Certain things are added. Wow. So much flexibility, so much freedom in that.
Yeah, this is great. So changing the perspective, not only looking through your eyes, but going into the view of, for example, your mother, or having a meta position, seeing the both of us. So what is happening then? Yeah, this is always eye-opening for people and understanding, okay, I just have my own focus when I interpret my life. But as soon as I get into this systemic view, there are more options and more possibilities, and of course more stories. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very, very empowering. And I'm even at a place now where I don't often find it necessary to know what the story I'm telling is. Just notice, oh, I'm telling a story and it feels like this. I don't have to tell that story. And without even thinking about it too much, I will start to look for another story to tell, because there's always another story to tell, always. Even if the events are exactly the same, the situation I'm in this moment is exactly the same. There's always another way to look at it. There's always another way to think about it.
Yeah. So what are your versions of your own story?
It depends on which one you want to know. Let's see. What story would you like me to tell? What would you most like the story of in my life?
Yeah, I would like to understand how, you have been grown up, how you became who you really are now, so that you help people, especially also spiritual people, to share their stories. So this was also a journey for yourself. Give us a little bit more about that.
So my mother, who I've already mentioned, has been an incredible influence in my life. It was very difficult for me growing up as her daughter because I never felt like I was getting the connection that I truly wanted from her. She's not very demonstrative. She doesn't really hug. She doesn't seem to. I used to think she didn't love me because she wasn't capable of it. I used to say, oh, she has an undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, which, hey, maybe not. I don't know. Those were my old stories at the time. What's interesting is that as I've been willing to show up and see something new in her, I see her very differently. But my experience growing up was that I really wanted her love and I didn't have it. And so I worked very hard to please her and developed a high sensitivity to what she needed. So she never had to ask me. It turned into people pleasing. That's how I got my sense of validation. And this is a story that's common with many healers and holistic practitioners, by the way. You know, we grow up to feel good, to get the love that we crave. I'll just speak for myself. I made myself into someone that maybe I wasn't, someone I thought others wanted me to be. And I never really asked, what do I want? I never really thought that was even possible. I would look for needs in my environment and meet them. And I was really good at it. So straight A student, really good friend, the best daughter that I could be. But something was missing from all of that. I felt like I was missing. I was always drawn to a spiritual path, even as a young child, which was originally around Christianity. I was raised Catholic, and then, as I mentioned, we got into the born-again Christian church. But as I became a teenager, and I started realizing I wanted to express myself more, started coming out, and just the natural process of becoming a young adult and my sexuality developing and things like that, I started to rebel against it. And that helped me to begin the journey of transformation and self-growth in earnest at really quite a young age. I'd always been drawn to it. And so I left my mother very young. We had this, she made an ultimatum because I was hanging out with friends who she didn't like, and gave me a choice that I was going to have to go to a private school or be homeschooled. And something inside me knew that either of those choices was going to kind of kill my soul. It wasn't going to work for me. And I didn't know what to do, because here I was, I think I was 16 years old at the time, and I have no control over my life in that sense, or so I thought. And it came to me. This is the first time I can remember having a very strong knowing and following it. And the knowing came, go live with your grandparents. And they lived a good 7 hours drive away on the other side of New York State from me. And I just knew that's what I was going to do. And I went to my mother and I told her that that's what I was going to do, even though I hadn't spoken to my grandparents. I hadn't even asked permission, which my mother very quickly pointed out. But it turned out that it was okay with them. And a week later, I was driving across state, middle of our school year, to live with my grandparents. And that really started my exploration in earnest of, who am I? Who do I want to be? How can I create a life for me? But I still didn't ask, what do I want? Even though I was moving more into myself. So I ended up getting married to a very lovely man, and we were together for 22 years. And it wasn't until I started doing deeper work with coaches, but all of this had been happening over time, like little bits, little bits, little bits. You know, I was growing all along the way and changing, that I realized I didn't believe I was allowed to have what I want. So I didn't even really acknowledge it. And in that process, I was able to see, oh, what if I am allowed to have what I want? And I realized I don't want to be married. I don't want to be in this business that I'm in. I ran a business with my husband that was doing quite well. And we had made over $1 million in sales over like a 6 or 7 year period. This isn't what I want. This isn't the life I want. I don't want to live here in New York. I've always lived in New York. And it was the first time I ever asked myself that. And it started a whole new, I reinvented my life. I didn't think of it that way at the time. It probably would have scared me too much to think of it that way. But I started traveling and pet sitting and visiting all different areas of mostly the United States, but I spent 2 months in Australia. And when I was in Australia over Christmas, I realized, oh, wow, I've changed everything in my life in the past, not even year. And so all of that informs what I do with clients and how I help them. So I'm very, very good at tracking that aliveness in people, what wants to happen, the possibilities around them. It's like these possibilities are living around you and they're responding to you. It's you and the universe. There's like this beautiful relationship that's happening all the time, and it comes out in your voice and what lights you up and the things that you get excited about, the things that you're curious about. Not everyone feels excitement, just curiosity. And so pointing those things out and giving people permission to do business, to do life the way they truly desire it. If you didn't have to follow the rules, if you didn't have to get it right, if you didn't have to know what you were doing, if you could just do it any way you wanted, what would that be like? And it's a gorgeous place to start from with creating. And it's something that doesn't often happen for people in business because we've been conditioned to think it has to look a certain way. It has to be serious. It's supposed to be hard. I have to do certain things and present myself professionally to be taken seriously, and all of those things that we're taught. And what if none of that is true because all of it's just a story? What's the story you'd like to tell in your business? What does that look like? And it's a version of that question, letting yourself really acknowledge, what do you truly want? And what might that look like?
Yeah, it's wonderful. So giving yourself permission, I think this is one of the big steps people really have to do, because if they're conditioned in a certain way, yeah, from all they have been before, and they feel, okay, my parents told me I need to become whatever, working in a bank, and this is a good job, or yeah, going into administration, this is a good job. And then they show up and say, oh, perhaps I have done that, but this is not fulfilling me. And I feel inside there's something else that wants to come out. And for example, I want to become a healer. And wow, I can't tell that story that I changed from working in a bank and now being a healer. This is, yeah, giving themselves this kind of permission is something that is a huge, huge step.
Yeah, the very first thing is just to acknowledge what it is you truly desire. Just acknowledge it without it needing to mean anything at all. Oh, I'd really like to be a healer. I feel in my heart, if I could do anything, I would love to heal the world. You don't have to do it. You don't have to change a thing. Just let that live there, because it comes alive. And if you let it be a possibility, it will start to grow on its own, because that's what we do. We are natural creators. It's only the conditioning that from that place we start to forget it. And we're little children. That's what we come on board with. Beautiful, creative beings that just within ourselves, we know what to do to grow, to grow teeth and learn how to walk. Nobody teaches us that. And we don't have judgments about how fast we should be doing it, or if we're doing it better than someone else. We just experience it however that is, and it's perfect. And at some point we start to make those judgments. So that's the first thing that I would say. If someone wants to be a healer or has something inside of them that, oh, I'm even afraid to acknowledge it. Well, first acknowledge it just for yourself. You don't have to say it to anyone else. You don't have to do anything about it. One of the hardest things for me to acknowledge was that I did not want to be married, because I thought it would mean all these things, but just acknowledging it was really important, because I didn't have a good reason. In my mind, I didn't have a good reason to not be married. I had a beautiful, loving husband. I had a beautiful life. There was no abuse. There was nothing wrong, other than it wasn't what I wanted, which somehow I thought that wasn't a good enough reason, right? So something else that I think about, if you have the desire for something, I believe that you're called in that direction. That it's not as if it's written in the future, but you are that already. You're already becoming it if you desire it. And I don't know what that looks like in the world, and I don't know how long it takes, but just know that if you desire it, it's already yours. It's already happening inside of you. And when I work with client playmates, oftentimes that's what I'm looking for. Where is it already happening? Because I guarantee it is. It just doesn't look the way that they think it's supposed to. So if someone were to say, I want to be a healer, I'm looking out for and help them find, where are you already doing that in your life? And then up pops this, like me as a storyteller, right? I wasn't thinking of myself as a storyteller, but as soon as I acknowledged it, I went, oh my goodness, I'm doing it all the time. I've been doing it all my life, actually telling stories. And then the way that I'm thinking about life and stories, and the way that I'm helping people to work with their messaging in business is telling stories. Oh my goodness, it's everywhere. So if you wanted to be a healer, I guarantee there's some way that you are healing yourself, healing others, being a presence. It probably doesn't look the way you think a healer looks, but there it is. And you can follow that curiosity and follow that inspiration in the way that it unfolds from right here where you are right now, so that you can share it more with the world.
Yeah, bringing up this awareness where it already happens in your life. This is great, because often people can't see it because they're experiencing themselves in a different way. But as soon as you start asking, okay, so for example, where are you healing already? And they say, okay, I'm always the one who get all the pets. Yeah, they just stop in front of my feet when they need help. So, okay, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm bringing them to the vet, and I'm helping them to become healthy again. So, okay, that's it, for example. Yeah, I see a lot of people already doing kind of things like that. And you wouldn't give them a label, or you are a healer. No, I'm just helping animals. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I work with so many healers, and I was puzzled at first because I have no background in healing or that type of thing, but I noticed that I was attracting a lot of movement therapists, yoga therapists, Pilates therapists, dance movement therapists, counselors, people who were actually therapists. I was like, what is going on? I don't have these areas in my background. And what I realized is that, oh, I'm a healer too, in my own way. I don't really use that label, and most people wouldn't recognize it. But what I help people to do is, in a healing capacity, it's just really, really feel okay in themselves and allow themselves to create what they desire through their business. And that could be described as a healing process. And I think that's why I resonate so much with people in these professions, because we're doing something very similar. We're transformation artists. We're transformation workers. And that's really what healing is. And we do it every day. Think about how our bodies are these beautiful miracles of transformation. If you get a wound, it knows how to heal. If you have a child and you console them, that's healing. When we take care of ourselves, I mean, take a nap on a day that we're having a rough time, that's healing. Like, where are we not healers? If we look at it that way, how each one of us is that thing. And if we'd like to bring it out more, yeah, you can. I wonder what that would look like.
And you're a healer because you're helping people to heal their story. If they can speak out the story in a different way with more love, and not like, oh, I have this bad time and I'm a bad person, but like appreciating what they have been through, what have been their experiences, like, yeah, giving a different perspective on that story. So you're healing the people also with that.
Yeah. What's interesting is that the more I do this, the more I see, oh, wow, you're so perfect. You're so perfect just as you are. There is nothing missing. I know it seems like all these things are missing. We could make a list, but everything that you need is right here, and there's nothing missing in you. And the healing process really isn't a fixing process. It's a dropping away of anything that doesn't see how perfect you are, that doesn't see how, oh, I'm okay. And it's just letting go of all those pieces. And it's so much easier than I thought it would be back when it looked to me like I had problems, I had issues that I needed to work hard to fix. And now it looks like, oh, I came on board this perfect life, this perfect baby that had everything that it needed, that had this connection with the divine, with God, with source, that would provide for all its needs. And I still am, except for the stories, except for the thinking I have that tells me that's not true. Oh my goodness, it's so much easier than thinking that there's something wrong with me I have to change.
This is what we often see, that we get all these images, how we should be, like, no, being not too fat, being not too tall, being loving, being somewhere somehow, but not being yourself, not being the essence you truly are. And create from that point of view, but creating from what other people expect you to be and how you should behave. So I think this is also like coming into this self-love and understanding, what you said, the way I am, it's fine. And from there I can start creating my future. And this will totally look different as you come from a point of view that is, okay, I'm not worth enough, or I will not be able to create this and this, and I can't be a healer because people expect me to be differently.
One of the things I've seen in my own life and also in my clients is that often I've felt I was too much. I would be misunderstood if I shared the way I looked at the world, which seemed to me very different. One of the things that I'm still exploring what this means for me and still learning to share it more deeply is that I'm drawn to question things, everything. And it looks very contrarian sometimes. If you were to tell me, oh, this is a good thing to do, I would go, is it? Not because I want to be obnoxious or contrarian, but because I'm seeking expanded possibilities. I am drawn to notice the expanded possibilities because I'm aware that every time I put something into a box, I'm limiting myself. And I just want to remind myself, oh, but that's not really true, is it? Is it working for me? If it's working for you, then no need to change it. You don't have to mess with it. So I'm drawn to question, and I'm drawn to share that. And my voice sometimes is kind of bold in what I write, not from a judgmental place, but from a place that says, hey, everybody else says you have to do it this way. What if that's not true? How would you like to do it? And inevitably, it's probably going to irritate somebody at some point. But it feels like that's what wants to come through me. That's the message that really I want to bring. So in business, it might look like this. Everybody says you have to use social media for your business if you want to be successful. And I'll say, really? I don't think that's true. What if it's not? You can use social media if you want to. I don't have a problem with that. But there are a lot of people, especially holistic practitioners, who don't like endless social media posting. They don't feel good about a lot of the tactics that are taught in marketing, which I learned and practiced for many years before I realized that, oh, that's not necessary, because that's what I was taught. You have to agitate the pain points of your ideal client. You have to know who they are. You have to put them in an emotional state because that's when they buy. And now I think that's the last thing that I want to do with people. I want people to be present and in touch with their own intuitive knowing when they say yes to working with me or no. I want them to know that they know. I don't want to use psychological manipulation to play into their fears to influence them to say yes, even with good intentions, which is what I was taught. If you know that your service is going to transform the life of this person you help, it's your obligation to do everything in your power to get them to say yes to you. Well, wow. That sounds like a recipe for disaster to me now. But at the time I thought, oh, I really will help these people. And I did. And so I would use those strategies. But for so many people, there's something inside of them that doesn't feel right about that. It doesn't feel right, but they think they have to because that's what mainstream business is teaching them. That's what a lot of the marketing experts are teaching them. And it doesn't feel right. Well, you don't have to. There may be something else you'll have to do. You'll have to find your way. You'll have to do another way. So I talk about marketing. People hate marketing. A lot of people hate marketing and everything they associate with it. But at its simplest form, it's really you having a message that connects with the person you want to help, that lets them easily recognize what you do and how you can help them so they can say yes. That's it. It's just communication, which everyone does, and there's nothing ugly about that. So I talk about unmarketing your business, throw out all your ideas of what marketing is supposed to look like. And if it could be anything, what would it be? You know, is it a conversation? Is it a party? Is it an experience? Is it an adventure? You know, what is your favorite way of connecting with people? Is it a hug? And if it was a hug, what does that mean? Like, what's your way of hugging people to attract clients, to communicate with the people you can help? It just helps me to think about it differently, which breaks me out of the old thinking that doesn't work. I'm creating a new story around business. And that's something that I see as really possible. So for me to do that right now in this moment, it looks like poking at some of those things that everybody says you have to do and saying, well, except when you don't, except if you don't want to, you can find another way. And what might that be?
Yeah, this is what I also see, that a lot of healers don't like to do the conventional marketing, like creating this sales funnels and speaking out to people like, oh, you have to buy this course and come into my coaching or into my therapy. This is not the way they normally act. And for them, it feels like being very much out of the comfort zone and not even being authentical, because this is not how they normally would come in contact with people. But of course, there are other ways. So do you think that this needs to be more really coming from the authentic person speaking to others than creating something that has been taught to be created?
Yes. So where I usually begin with people is asking them what's already working. What do they like? How do they find their clients? And even if they're new in business, or how do you find opportunities? How are you creating in the world? When things go easily for you, what's that like? And we look at that and follow the clues. Oh, well, what if you did that over here? So for example, let's see, I was talking to, it's like the things that we're doing just happen through us naturally. They're already happening. The path is already there for us to follow, and we don't even realize it because the clues are small. I'm tuned into them. Most people are not. But I'm like, oh, this is really alive. So let me think of a specific example of someone I've spoken to recently. Okay. So I have a client playmate who hates conventional marketing and has tried to do it and feels like she fails every time. It just doesn't work for her. But what happens very naturally is she loves facilitating these transformational experiences. She loves facilitating these adventure journeys. And she also loves collaborating and partnering with people. So I said, so she loves having that community, and she loves partnering with people to help them with their communities and collaborating with individuals and creating new things. I was like, well, what if that is your quote unquote marketing? What if that is how you reach people? What would it look like if you create adventures for a community and invite people to join you in them? Would that be fun? Yeah. What if you find people who are really cool to partner with and create things with them? so that they can promote it and do the promotion to their audience, and you don't have to do the promotion part, which is not fun for you. You show up and facilitate what it is that you do, and they do the part that they do well. They communicate with their audience, so you get to do the fun parts, and that is your quote-unquote marketing. That's how you get business. You have conversations with people. You talk to people and you help them. Would that be fun? Yeah. It doesn't feel like marketing at all, does it? No. But that's what it can look like. And it's different for every person. It's coming back to if you could do it anyway. And a lot of people, it might be actually just having conversations. That is the simplest thing to do. Just talk to them and help them. I am a content creator myself. I'm a writer, and I've always loved creating content. It's very natural and authentic for me, in particular when it comes from the need that someone else has. You can kind of see this in my past, right? I got good at noticing needs and filling them. So I'm very good. It's very natural for me to see there's a need in my community, noticing what it is, and then creating something, a piece of information. In my case, it might be a video. Most likely it's going to be an article that helps them, that points them to it. And if you can do that and actually help, rather than just giving a tip, creating some of that transformation that you do with that person, creating a little bit of that shift, moving them a little bit closer to it in that piece of content you create, framing it in the conversation of here is where you are right now, here's where you want to be, and here's the journey to get there. I'm going to help you right now with a little piece of that journey, and if you want more help, let me know. I'm here to help you. It's very natural. I call that transformational content. It's very natural, very authentic. It's allowing the way that you connect with new clients to be what you do naturally. It's just you being you, doing what you love, helping people in the world. That's it. And drop everything else that's extraneous. Drop the idea of a sales funnel if that doesn't work for you. Drop the whole, I need to have an email list and a lead magnet, and I need to nurture my email sequence and build a blah, blah, blah. You know, like all that stuff just messes with our heads. Let all that go. Keep it simple. It's you connecting with a person in a way that's joyful for you. And what would that look like? It's so refreshing to come from that place. So much easier.
Yeah, so for me, for example, I'm in the human design, I'm a projector. So I can stand somewhere, and what happens is that somebody shows up and tells me the problems. It is like I have written this on my face. Please tell me what is going on in your life. And so this is how I often come in contact with new clients, because they show up and just tell me, even if I'm just standing there looking at the ocean, having a glass of wine, people will tell me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's allowing ourselves to be more of that, which we already are. So for you, Swanette, it's go stand in beautiful places and let people notice that you're there. No, don't hide. You don't have to scream. Just don't hide. Just be there in beautiful places doing things you love. I'm a projector in human design also, and I'm experimenting with my own way of what that looks like. And I'm realizing, like yourself, that if I go to places and talk about things that inspire me and share what I'm seeing in the world and how I see it, the right people will notice it and go, oh, and that's always been the way it was. I was so quiet in my classrooms, but I was always noticed. I was always noticed by someone. Certainly certain teachers would be like, oh, that one, she has something going on there. And I was quiet and I didn't say anything. I had the answers, but I thought I can't be one of those people who raises their hand with the answers. I can't be a smarty pants. I don't want to get teased. I will be ridiculed for that. I don't want to be too much, too smart, too talented, too whatever, too loud. So it was always quiet, 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 right? But when I just show up being me, wow, following my inspiration, following my intuition, those little nudges that say, I wonder what will happen if I go over here. What if I talk to that person over there? And things just start to happen naturally. And that's not what we're taught, because we're taught in business, you have to make it happen. You have to push, you have to hustle. If it's to be, it's up to me. And it's not that I don't have a part in it, because there is a role for me to show up and take the actions that I know to do, but it's not from a place of forcing or pushing or being something I'm not. It actually comes from knowing and just getting in touch with what's moving through me right now. There's a much easier way to be in the world than we've been taught. And I'm really, really excited to be exploring that for myself and with clients these days. It's just so much easier than I ever thought was possible.
So how does a process look like if a new client would like to work with you? How could they come to you, or what can they do? What would be the process you bring them through? Can you give us a little bit more details about that?
Yeah. So I've decided that I'm not selling at all anymore. It sounds really, because I like, you know what, selling, I don't do that. Not the way I used to think of selling, right? So I knew how to do this. I learned how to do this. So that's not part of it. That is not a part of it. So that's off the table right off the bat. So I would invite someone, usually if they find me, they've probably read some of my content or watched some of my videos, and there's something about what I'm saying that's connecting with them. So they will reach out, and I have an application form on my website where people can fill that out and have a free conversation with me. It's a real session. It's not a discovery call. There's nothing wrong with those. I just want to get into it. I want to play. I love helping people to create lives and businesses that they really want. So they would fill out this form and tell me a little bit about themselves. And I do ask for their birth date, time, and location, because sometimes I look at human design. It may or may not be useful for, I'm not human design, and I'm not an expert in human design, but I'm a dabbler, and I use it as an intuitive jumping off point. So sometimes that's very helpful. And then we show up and just have a conversation. And I might say something like, at the beginning of the conversation, I will usually say, this is my gift to you. We can do whatever you want in this time together. We have an hour of time. What would make this conversation really extraordinary for you? And then we see what happens. And I follow my curiosity, and we just play. And I'm not doing anything other than doing what I do. And I tell them at the beginning, I'm not going to talk about what I do and how much it costs and how you can hire me. There is information on my website if you want to see that. If you want to know more, you'll need to ask. And if you don't, that's totally okay with me. This is my gift to you. It feels really good to come from that place for me. And so I'm a little bit more selective now than I was in the beginning about who I will talk to, which is why I have an application process, because I'm not for everyone. I don't need to be, and nor do I want to be. I could help. This is something for me. Like, I could probably help as a projector, you too. You could probably help pretty much anyone who's open to it, right? I believe that's possible, anyone. But there are certain people who really inspire me. Those are the people who I really want to be focusing my time and energy and attention on. So that means, yeah, I'm going to say no thank you to some of those people who don't really fit in that most inspiring category, according to as I'm led, you know. And then we just see, I'm relating with people, I'm connecting with people, and I make these fascinating friendships, partnerships, collaborations come out of this. Not just clients too. Sometimes the time is not now. I might meet someone and it's 6 months or a year before they come back to me and say, oh, Stephanie, now is the time. I want to work with you. And I love that. It feels generous. It feels like me. Now, it looks different for some of my clients, because for some of my clients, they have been giving too much of themselves in a free session that doesn't feel good. So doing it my way might not work for them, depending on where they are. Some people do introductory sessions or, you know, things like that. So it's really going to, there's not one way to do it. In other words, I don't have a formula that I'm going to try to squeeze my clients into. It's really connecting with their aliveness first, what's happening inside of you, and helping them to trust it, to be able to recognize and trust it. Because again, that's not something that most of us are taught. My clients tend to be quite intuitive. So they have a relationship with their intuition already. They just really probably haven't been allowing themselves to explore it in terms of their business and marketing, because they thought, oh, well, that's another world and it has different rules and I have to follow those rules. Well, what if you don't? Let's see what that looks like for you. So that's kind of how the process unfolds. And as we get into it, there are certain milestones maybe that happen, but it's really all about what is it that you're creating. Typically, the people who find me have a lot of experience to pull from. They have years of coaching or healing or professional experience, but they're transitioning. There's something new, like you use that phrase, there's something inside of them that really wants to emerge, and they don't really know where to start, or they don't even know what it is, or they know what it is, but it feels too big because they have this huge vision and they can't figure out how to get from here to there, right? So all of these things are happening, and they don't like this world of business and marketing that they've been taught has to look a certain way. And so there's a lot of pressure and confusion around it. So that's where they begin. And then we get in touch with, depending on where they're at, it usually starts with, what if everything that's happening right now is exactly what's supposed to be happening? You're exactly where you need to be. Let's get present with it and notice what's here in the room with us, and it's all okay. And from that place, usually very quickly, we can get into a space of creation and letting go of all of the pressures and all of the stories that aren't serving. And then we create some really cool stuff. And that voice, the people who are drawn to me also are typically writers and teachers, speakers. They want to create courses. They have, they do both one-on-one and group sessions with people. There's a big vision that they want to share with a lot of people, and they communicate it. A lot of them are performers in some way as well, which is really interesting. And so I have a lot of fun with those people, and we really play our way into, it becomes lighter. It's not always light. Life isn't, right? But we can be light with even the heavy things. So that's kind of what it looks like. Does that describe it well, Swanette, for you? Did I?
Yeah, I get a picture of that. So for me, it was like, okay, so how can she get this out? Like, okay, I have my story, and I'm not feeling comfortable with some special way of marketing and finding my way. And so creating stories, creating also the way you can use your story going out into the world, like being a speaker or writing your blog or whatever you use. Or for me, it's like having my podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like now you get to be hanging out by the ocean with a bunch of people who can listen in and then come to you and say, Swanette, this is what's happening in my life. What do you think? This is how you can hang out with many people at once. And the more it feels like, the more our conversation here feels like the ocean, whatever that represents to you. I'm just using that as a jumping off point, as a metaphor. The more it's going to powerfully connect with the people who you're here to serve.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, this was already so inspiring, and I'm sure for my audience as well, because it really gives me a release of, okay, I can do it my way, and all this is fine. What if I don't need to create this sales funnel? But if I'm feeling fine with that, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are so many different ways, and already having this podcast or being at the ocean, really, I'm in Madeira, so I'm really here. I can see the ocean from where I'm sitting at the moment. It's blue and the sun is shining. So this is really a place where I can be and speak with people, and this is also okay. And yeah, as I told you, it gives me a lot of release, and I'm sure this has a lot of insights given also to my audience. So yeah, wonderful. So now, last but not least, do you have any tips you want to give my audience before we end this conversation?
Yeah, so what comes to me is that if there's something that jumped out at you in this conversation, positively or negatively, without judgment. Just notice what that was. Okay, let yourself kind of sit with that one and ponder with it. Ponder it for a bit and just notice what happens. What is this about? Like, what if I did this? Or what if I didn't do this? Whatever that is, play with it, because that's going to be probably the most relevant for you. The other thing that I would suggest is to ask yourself right now, what do I really desire? And see what comes up. If there's a particular area of your life where you're not feeling happy, where you feel like you'd like some change, ask about that. What do I really desire in my relationship with my son? What do I really desire in my business or my job? And I'll give one more question, which is, it's been coming up a lot, so I'll share it. A lot of times we look at what we think is possible in the world. We look out at the world and I say, okay, well, I can do this or this. Usually there's this, what they call the false dichotomy, right? Like there are two things I can do and neither one of them looks very good to me. So ick, right? Instead of coming from that place in your relationship or in your work, what if you ask the question, how would we like to enjoy each other? It's a whole other way of relating to people, to your business, to the environment. How would we like to enjoy each other? So when we're talking about we, it might be myself and Swanette in this conversation. How would we like to enjoy each other? So it's not just about me, what do I want? But it's like, what would we like to create together that would be joyful? And I can do the same for my business. Wow. How would my business and I like to enjoy each other? Because it has a life of its own. There's this thing that wants to move through me. If I have a message, if there's a presentation I want to give, how would we like to enjoy each other? And notice what comes up from that question, because it just inspires a different way of looking at things that's about play and enjoyment and fun rather than practicality, working hard, doing a good job, and all those things that like it's heavier and heavier and heavier.
Wow, this was so great. Thank you so much for all the information you gave to my audience and all these ideas. And yeah, thank you for being my guest on this show.
Oh, it is my pleasure, Swanette. Thank you for having me.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, Spiritual-Changemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual-Changemakers-Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.